Otto,
I'm Nordy.
and this is Crunchy Roulette. We're excited to participate in another episode. You want to introduce our anime today?
Our anime today to have a very professional discussion about is called Soul Buster.
Very professional,
Ve-
absolutely.
Thank you very much. For those of you just joining us for the first time, basically what we do is we watch 3 episodes of a given anime that is chosen at random. We have an insane algorithm that spits out garbage and we pick it up and watch it. So, as I said in the first episode, expect stuff that we hate, and we've met that expectation in my
Yeah.
humble opinion.
I am surprised less and less by the anime that we get thrown into the universe. And every time we get one of these, I hope for the best. And some days are more disappointing than others.
Exactly.
All right. Well, with that said, yeah. So Soulbuster, you want to kick us off with the synopsis from Crunchyroll?
Sounds good. So, Keshu, China. The history books say that in the era of the Three Kingdoms, this land was a place of never ending war. A young high school boy, Shunshin, who hates his city's history, is troubled by a certain dream. When he wakes up from the dream, strange things begin to happen one after another, and without understanding what's going on, he suddenly finds himself facing Gian, one of the generals from the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, who's trying to kill him. Just before Gian's blade strikes home, a mysterious, beautiful woman appears in front of Sanshin. What trials await Sanshin?
Speaking of professional, nailed it. Launch that into the universe. Good job. So one thing I will say about I don't think you read the synopsis beforehand. I usually do, and one of the things that I actually noticed about this particular anime is that it's actually a Chinese manhwa, and I didn't know that at first. And basically, it's based around like three kingdoms, like they said, and that if I'm not mistaken, like there's a bunch of different things, but the most popular thing for me that I know about the Three Kingdoms is Dynasty Warriors. It's just a video
Ah,
game.
there you go. Very nice.
um, I even think Gintama makes a lot of references to the Three Kingdoms. I will probably never read the book, the actual book, but I hear it's pretty good. One of the classics.
Yeah, it's an old one for sure.
So, what were your first impressions? You saw, I mean, a 3.4 rating on Crunchyroll is not exactly the most exciting thing at first, but what do you think from just the cover?
The cover itself was just like overall boring. Here's a lady in armor smashing, coming forward at you, sword first. So, action anime, and nothing too exciting about just the cover itself. And now that I've first read the synopsis, it makes a lot more sense, I'd say, because there's a lot that really was not explained. That kind of they had like assumptive, like, oh yeah, what the Three Kingdoms is. So by him
Absolutely.
mentioning the Three Kingdoms like once or twice, is like, oh, that's what this is about.
Yeah.
And I'm not a history buff.
They assume a lot out of you as a viewer. They're like, ah, you'll understand. You'll get it. It's like the main character doesn't even get it. How are we gonna get it?
Yeah. Especially when he like and that explains why he's like, I hate history so much, and that pushes him toward like, well, now you have to learn history or you're literally going to be killed.
Maybe this is just all a big dream. I mean, we
Yeah,
don't know that, right? There is a lot of dreaming in the first episode, you know?
there is. Yeah, that's one of my notes is a confusing dream sequence intro.
Yeah. So let's get into it. So I mean, basically, episode one starts out in a sort of no build up at all. Just you're just suddenly in a dream world or waking from a dream of some kind, and you have no idea what's going on. You don't know who these characters are or anything like that. And then what was your take on that?
It was just so goddamn confusing for me. It's the main character. and running around in this weird, like astroplane kind of world. And there's this like living skeleton guy. He announces his name as what I'm assuming is a very famous general and probably one of the main characters from the Three Kingdoms,
Hmm.
is they made sure to mention it. And then he goes through.
Suikyo Sensei. See, I wrote it down. I
There
know.
you go.
Couldn't
Uh,
pronounce any of them. I wrote them down.
hey, he smashes some shit and then wakes up from the dream, and then it goes into narration. And the narration didn't help. It didn't help me at all because I think again like even with narration to like explain more of the story, it had assumed that you had already read the Three Kingdoms and you know all about it.
Yeah, the
So
first 5 minutes, counting the introduction or whatever, the opening sequence was just a lot of talk, 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 and they tried their best to explain the situation, and I think my eyes glazed over 2 or 3 times. It, I don't know that I absorbed any of it. It was just it was like school all over again. It's like I want to know what you're saying, but my brain just says no. So I gave up. I was like, all right, well, let's just see if we could pick it up through context at some point. So yeah, so he basically fast forward a little bit because there's really nothing that happens. He wakes up in a from a
nurse's office.
dream and there's nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he teleports to some other dimension where he meets the character you're talking about is that Suikyo Sensei, who basically says like, "Hey, you want to play a game?"
Yeah.
It's,
Now
it's
this
like
guy,
Saw.
this this little character who was like floating around on a sake bowl or cup, like reminded me of Chaozu from Dragon Ball Z. Like if Chaozu married a frog and they had a baby, then it would be that character. That
There
was
it
my.
is. It's 8 to 9 minutes in, everybody, and he couldn't help but bring up Dragon Ball.
Yeah.
Every damn episode. You always wait for it. We should just start every episode by saying, put in the comments before you start where you think the timestamp will
Yeah.
be when Nori mentions Dragon Ball. It's a game
Oh,
within a game. Yeah. No, okay, so yes, I agree. He's kind of a weird character.
yeah.
Um, I thought it was funny. He basically says draw a card of like the eight that's there, right?
Yeah.
And that it's semi-relevant. You really don't know what's going on and you don't understand what's going on. But he says pick a card, any card, playing some magic with him. And then he goes, now wait a minute. You're gonna have to defend this card with your life, and if you don't, you're gonna die. And so Shin's response was like, "Yeah, okay, fuck it."
Yeah. That sounds great to me.
That was no
I'm a
question.
teenager. He's like
It wasn't
YOLO.
even. It was just such an anticlimactic that just like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And the card essentially just chooses itself for him, and it appears in his hand, and he sees the silhouette of what we now know is the cover girl here. But
Now, I do want to actually rewind for a moment and talk about just real quick touch on when he woke up in the nurse's office.
hmm
Uh, so he was like trying to talk to the nurse. The nurse had like earphones in, and she's like, "Oh, sorry." She even says like, "Oh, sorry, I don't like listening to teenager problems." And then in walks like his history teacher who like they drew his face in like the most fucking obvious villain face possible. So you're
yeah,
like, okay, the nurse is a terrible person, the teacher is terrible. Like, what kind of high school is this?
yeah, yeah. That was Cho Sensei, and it turns out that's his history teacher.
Right.
And he even walks into the nurse's office and I got your homework for you.
Yeah.
You thought you were gonna get away from history, but history's important. It's like this whole the whole buildup of the first episode is, oh, did you hate history? Oh, well, here's a whole anime about why you should really understand history better
Exactly. Exactly.
through the form of a game, a
Yeah.
death game.
Robotic
So
dialogue
he
and robotic animation. Gotta love it.
100%, 100%. Oh man, we'll get into that. Just the quality. Anyways, yeah, so after he agrees to the game, he wakes up in the library, right?
Yeah, he's in the library, and then instantaneously, his history teacher is there, just like, "What are you doing?" You know.
Hmm.
and immediately knows about the card somehow and like thanks him for breaking the glass and release the heart of that emperor, which still confuses the hell out of me, like why that's even relevant. But maybe that's explained somewhere down the line, but not within the first 3 episodes.
I think confusion is the theme of the anime is because I wrote in that I worked in brackets in my notes the word confused, and then I wrote no shit, so am I, because like the anime, like the main character was confused, I was confused, everyone's confused. It's
Yeah.
I think it's a theme. But yeah, he shows up, he's like demands the card,
Yeah.
and
And he's like about
um
to hand it over, then he's like, "Oh wait, I promised that I'd defend this with my life. I can't really do that."
yeah, he says no thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then all
and
of a
then
sudden, history teacher pulls out his own card, and that's where the aforementioned Gien comes out. Uh,
yeah.
so historical card. I guess they're trying to like, steal on the popularity of Fate, the whole Fate series.
I did make a correlation there. This was
Yeah.
very Fate-esque
Yeah.
in regards to like, hey, the soldiers from around the world or history now become like your guardians and
Yeah. But then they like crossed it with Yu-Gi-Oh, so that way it's card based.
I totally I totally half expected Chow to yell out
Yeah.
Yu-Gi-Oh! Oh, that's the only thing it was missing. Maybe we do a YouTube short and just have him yell it out
Yeah.
as a part of this.
That'd
Well,
be perfect.
he summons Gien. To your point, he summons his little Yu-Gi-Oh card soldier, and Sunshin runs away and is freaking out and stumbles and don't hurt me, blah blah blah, and then drops his card, and he's like, oh yeah, I have one of those.
Yeah.
It's just
It's like maybe it does something.
and then and then he's like, Yu-Gi-Oh! And Shuyu arrives. Shuyu, yeah, go.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much the whole episode. There's
Yeah,
nothing to it.
exactly.
It was there's just a whole lot of introduction to history and trying to introduce a handful of characters, no background at all, and then the soldiers brought into the world to fight, and that's sort of the wrap of episode 1.
Oh yeah, 100%. And it just like goes straight into episode 2 and continues the fight between the woman he summoned and General Guillen there, which again, it's like both of these characters may or may not have been in the Three Kingdoms, and it's like the writer, director, whomever in charge of this anime like really expects like all the viewers to have already read the Three Kingdoms and read the manhwa to like get what's going on here.
You're saying you didn't.
Yeah, I did not,
Is that what you're
unfortunately.
saying?
If I knew.
Oh, I lied in the beginning when I said I didn't. I totally hours and hours research time. I
Absolutely.
totally didn't watch this an hour ago before the recording. For professionals,
Yeah,
yes.
exactly.
So,
Uh,
yeah, they episode 2 kicks off and Gien and Shuyu are immediately
yeah.
fighting.
And it's a very confusing fight. Like so to say camera work is like the worst angles I've ever seen in like a battle on an anime. Like
Yeah.
it somehow made the fight between one guy with a big sword and one girl with a big sword like very confusing. Not and it wasn't just like bashing like weapons together like you see in the really cheap ones where there's not a lot of movement. It was like all this jumping around at weird angles, so it was like impossible to follow like what was even happening. It was very
And can we
strange.
take a moment here? I'm gonna touch on the art style here a little
Ah,
bit because I think it's important for the fighting to really comprehend this a little bit. And
yeah,
anybody who watches this will know right away from like the first 10 seconds. But they do a lot of layering, like ink and splatter onto the screen, and I don't know if that's just to hide the shitty anime that's behind it, like the shit, or if this is actually an art style that I just not aware of. This is actually the first one I've seen, kind of. And but this theme of like especially when they're fighting though, which is why I brought it up, is it's just way over the top. You
Yeah,
almost can't even see anything on the screen. It's just
absolutely.
flashing colors and extra ink covering the actual art. I'm
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
okay.
I do have a note here that says, "What the fuck is up with the ink splatters?" Every time they like clash weapons, like instead of it being bright and shiny, it's just like ink splatters over the entire
Yeah.
screen.
Yeah, it totally felt like they were trying to hide the lazy animation because it
Yeah.
truly, if you took that away, the animation was, I mean, nobody was moving. Nobody,
Oh yeah.
especially when there was dialogue. One of the camera tricks where they just, oh, they're not facing the camera. Oh, we could just keep them standing there. Yeah, they did a lot of it. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's an ongoing theme throughout the show, and to each their own. Some people I'm sure out there really appreciated it. I thought it was just a cover-up job.
Yeah, I think
So,
it was like somebody wanted to make it look more artistic, so
yeah.
they put like that the weird black shades like over every single character and then did weird ink splotches on the screen just like constantly in action sequences to just
Yeah.
like have it the cheapest way to make it look artistic and then they can just say it's artistic like the person who duct taped the fucking banana to a blank canvas and it sold it for $1 million.
Don't be
Like,
jealous. Don't be
don't
jealous.
I?
All right. You're just upset you didn't think of it first.
I
All
am.
right.
It's true. Like
You're
everyone
like,
in the
I could have
world is
done that. Well,
upset
you
with that.
didn't.
Exactly.
Anyone that's upset is just mad because they could have done the same thing and
Yeah.
they didn't.
They're not a true artist.
They're not. They just don't get
Only a visionary would think.
it. All right. Well, so the episode two introduction is just them fighting. Cho, the history teacher, teases and lays into Son Shin for basically not understanding his history. Says like, "You don't know what's going on," as if anybody else does, right?
Well, it's not
And
just the
he
history, it's also like the game that they're playing. It's like,
Well, yeah, and he at least goes into explaining a little bit of like, there's lords and then there's soul busters, and like you kind of get through context of the two. There's a power dynamic is driven by spiritual power, and the level of spiritual power is how strong the soul buster is, and
right.
the spiritual power is based on whatever the lord has. Yeah, there's some like terminology that's kind of being peppered into the episode finally, and I'm starting to understand what this game is based on.
Yeah, well, it's like the lord who controls the buster has to have like strong soul energy, so to say, to make sure their champion, the buster, is well and capable, fast, strong, able to pull off special moves and all that. So the history teacher tries to convince, the lady soul buster to get onto his side. And and then we run into once again the trope of here's this warrior for no reason whatsoever being instantly loyal to like the main character who is also super weak. Like
Yeah.
at one point she even complains to him about how weak he is and how she's stuck with him and how much of a coward he is, but then she's also still loyal to him within all that.
Yeah, 100%. So it's just a lot of filler conversation of the same shit over and over again.
Yeah,
So much so that I mean, I wrote down a very short conversation here that I was like, why is that even a thing? They could, and Cho, his teacher's basically teasing him, and he's like, oh, there's three reasons why your soul buster could be having having a rough time here, and it's one, she's having a bad day. Two, she's
yeah,
lacking sleep. Or three, her lord's spiritual power is super low. And I was, uh, my first thought was like, why was this necessary?
exactly.
Like just the quality of writing. And we talked about this a few minutes ago.
It's terrible. It's like an AI
Yeah, oh,
generated script.
dude, it might be. It's bad. Yeah, it gets worse. So.
That
But
kind of
yeah,
swings us into episode 3, actually.
yeah. There's a lot of basically the episode two is just a lot of like back and forth and banter, and eventually they kind of run away and are trying to like do something crazy.
Yeah. Well,
Shuyu does her power move to escape the red skin or whatever it is,
yep.
the giant Hadouken with
Yeah.
sword.
Yeah, and then the rest of the episode is basically like them running away, running to different
Runs away,
parts of
yeah.
the high school building, tries to get his phone. Oh, teacher's there, run away some more, and they finally make it to the roof, which of course they're there again on the roof, and that's where episode 2 ends. And then episode 3 is just them on the roof and the fight continues.
Yeah, I will interject with one thing here. So there was a little bit of conversation between Shu and Sonshin about so again more like background story, like what are they doing and what's the purpose and all this kind of stuff. And that was relevant, I guess, to some extent. Again, shitty writing. It explains a little bit. So she explains, okay, in the era of this happening, their souls were taken, locked away, and they're in an endless loop of reincarnation, basically waiting to fight. And her whole goal is to make it right. She just wants her final rep. And they kind of like nod and high five in their own way and in their own special writing way, and basically say, "Okay, we're together on this." And then yeah, they they run away.
Yeah.
It was horrible, but at least it was context.
I was like, yeah, slight character development to say like, okay, she has a reason for fighting,
Yeah,
not for the sake of the world, but for her own soul to finally be able to die,
yeah,
and which is all the more
I'll take it.
confusing why she stays with this, uh, weak lord when her goal is to personally be able to die, which she's been fighting this war for like generations, just like in Fate, uh, and can't get out of it. So then instead of like going with a stronger lord that's obviously more experienced and prepared for this whole war, she's like, nah, I'll stick with this guy that doesn't know anything because, I think he's cute or something.
That I don't think they get to choose who their lord is. I think the game chooses for them, and then they just appear in front of whoever pulls the card.
But the history teacher was like, give me the card and, then you can be on my team and be with a better lord that's going to kick some ass and actually win this thing.
That's
And she,
true. That's true.
yeah.
I guess in that world, she could have decided to be like, okay, do I want to be with this douchebag or this other douchebag?
Yeah.
You know, or
Exactly.
what is it? Do I want a giant douche or do I want a shit sandwich for a lord?
Yeah.
And we'll
Exactly.
figure it out on the next episode of
Yeah.
Soul Buster.
Oh man.
Yeah, yeah, episode 3 again, you like to your point, they run up to the roof and again more fighting. And then so I wrote down this was kind of funny. Cho, the history teacher here, basically casts a spell that is essentially a domain expansion.
Yeah.
Uh, it's just I don't know what popularized, but
Yeah.
you know, it was it was def this was probably before that anime, but
Well, no, it was something that Fate did too. The first Fate. That's what they had. Like,
you see,
yeah.
everybody's done it.
Yeah.
Well, Soul Buster is no exception. They did their own
Uh,
version of a domain expansion, trapped themselves in.
yeah, the domain for him was just a bubble, which they didn't explain why she got weaker once they did that bubble, but as soon as the bubble was there, she was like worse. She's like, I'm claustrophobic. Oh shit, I can't fight.
Uh, Yeah, that was bad. So there's a lot of choppy, a lot of slicing in the air, a lot of swinging and posturing and whatever you want to call it. But the history teacher basically says, "Okay, again, time to get serious," which means he goes Super Saiyan, of course, to
Yeah.
Saiyan Dragon terminology here.
Hey.
But he goes extra levels and basically goes crazy. And then history teacher being a hypocrite says, "Oh, by the way, just don't kill her because we want the card."
Right. Exactly.
And then that's kind of where we learn, like, if the Soul Buster dies or the Lord dies or whatever, everything is reset. The card goes back into the pool. But if they don't die, you could actually steal the card. We
Yeah.
learned that a little bit through context the previous episodes, but they kind of finally explain the whole thing while Son Shin begs for mercy, I guess. Surrenders? Is that what
Yeah,
he's
well,
doing?
he surrenders, and I still like am baffled by this. Like as the bubble is closing, there's a little bit of sunlight that then disappears, and like the sun is setting, but then somehow like Shonsen gets from that there's power in the sun. So he does the whole trope of like fake surrendering, even to the point of like convincing the what's her face. So he tells CoverGirl like, "Hey, I surrender and I want to free you, so you can go be with this guy, this lord who's obviously better. Go ahead and cut my head off."
Now you said pretends to surrender. Are you what? It was a trick? No. It was so serious.
Yeah,
Quality
and
acting during this anime, I'm telling you. It's he nailed that feign surrender.
oh yeah. Which the teacher thought he did because the teacher was totally like, guards down, I win, la la la. All of a sudden, the setting sun, which there's almost no sunlight left on the setting sun, rises and powers up CoverGirl's sword, to which he then like screams at her like attack, then she does her like fucking super Kamehameha and blows it away
Yeah.
because the setting sun rose, gave her more power. So very confused by 2 points here. Like one, how did the setting sun come back up? And two, where was there any indication at all that her sword was like powered by the sun?
I
Like,
okay, so I will comment on this. I watched a couple times because I saw the same thing you did, and the second time I watched it, I I did notice what was supposed to be the intended catch from the audience, which was that there was this little beam of sunlight coming through, and what it was is the bubble around them had created like a magnifying glass effect, and it
okay,
had in one single point at the top of the bubble, there was a much more focused beam of light that was coming down with the remaining sun. And they it was like half a second they flashed while he was walking forward, and you could see that there was this focused beam of light, and that's what they were. So they did hint towards it. It wasn't so much that there was sun certain spot or whatever. It's that at a certain angle, this light would be stronger. And so he that's why he walked forward and then she came up to him and then the second she came up behind him, she was standing directly where the light was.
well, they also had the sunrise. Like they had that little point, but then they also had the sunrise. So there's no more sun coming in somehow from the side. And and again, it's like how the holy hell was her sword powered up? Like it wasn't that she let off a bright light that distracted him and like a flashbang grenade. It was just her attack was suddenly strong enough to take them out in one blow. When she tried it the first time, it was only good enough to distract them so they could run away again and did like no damage whatsoever.
I think I'm gonna have to call in the anime law here, anime rules. It your willful suspension of disbelief
Yeah.
has to kick in for this one. I'm afraid to say it. But
No.
yeah, it was kind of awkward. It was like they kind of hinted at some stuff, you know, in true Soul Buster fashion. They don't explain anything. They just assume that whatever they show us is just going to be accepted as, okay, yeah, that totally made sense. You're just like, okay, the sun gives her powers. Okay.
Yeah.
And this new lord just knows that. All right.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
This guy who had no idea about the game, barely knows about history.
So I will say that at least during this surrender moment or whatever, they do offer some more context peppered in through storytelling, and the history teacher explains to in a final wish basically
Hmm.
what this whole thing is. Explains the story of Kente, like being the emperor or whatever, and being betrayed by who we find out is that weird looking character dude
Yep.
who basically steals his heart. It still is in some kind of curse, or I don't know. We
Right.
don't really know.
Exactly. That's my point.
Creates some kind of game about locked souls, and these are former soldiers. I don't know. This is the part where the whole thing falls apart, but they at least they tried in their best to explain it.
Oh man. Terrible. Terrible.
Yeah, it was a bit rough. So, um, what else? Well, episode three was
Well,
that pretty much the end? I think it wraps up
well,
at the end.
so the Kamehameha like wipes out the other Soul Buster, and the teacher like falls on the ground. He's KO'd, uh, and then the main character is like, "Holy shit, did we just kill a teacher?" And CoverGirl is like, "Oh no, don't worry, he's just knocked out." But because his Soul Buster died, he has now forgotten everything about the card game and being a Soul Buster, being a Lord, and all that.
Yep.
So he'll just go back to
Convenient.
being, yeah, he'll go back to his normal life as an asshole teacher that hates teenagers.
Oh, good.
Which, again, like, what kind of high school is this that the nurse and the history teacher both hate teenagers specifically? Get a different job or go teach grade school or something. Come on.
Yeah, it's all a dream.
Yeah.
Remember? This is all just a dream.
Now big the big scare though, because CoverGirl retires to the card, thinking they're safe,
Yes.
and then
So I will say
yeah,
that it was very Pokemon-esque. It was like,
yeah,
Cashew, return.
yeah. That's where she's gonna
just
regenerate.
just right back into the
Yeah.
Pokeball. That was Soul Buster Mon return.
So he thinks he's fine. The only other student we've seen at the school as a whole, just for context, throughout all three episodes, there's been four people total in the entire school. The main character, the history teacher, the nurse, and one other student that
Yep.
ignores him when he tries to ask her for help.
Library exploding, fighting,
Yeah, no
explosions,
people anywhere.
fires.
Yeah. Now,
Nobody.
so all of a sudden, the one other student comes out at the
Re
end and
Rion.
yeah, there you go. And
Yep.
whips out her card, and this other guy appears in a splash of water with two swords, and then it's like, you know, main character is like, "Oh my god!" And then they cut to credits. And now here's the thing: if you watch the intro sequence, so the characters that are introduced, the nurse is one of them. So of the four people that exist in this school, all four people are card holders because they introduce the nurse along with some other character that is clearly like the historic figure that goes with him, the soul buster that goes with him. So
I don't
is
think that was the nurse.
I think
I think
so
that's
because she's
no.
got
I'm
that.
pretty sure. I'm pretty sure that's Rion, the one that shows up at the end of episode three.
No, no, there's both Rion and the nurse.
There's six people on the cover that I saw. Three of them are the lords. Three of them are the soul busters. And one they haven't introduced is that blonde whatever. And then the other one is the main guy. And the other one I thought was Rion, the one that the girl that you're talking about that shows up. Are
Okay,
you
okay.
sure?
You're making me doubt
Tell
myself.
tell us tell us down in the comments because we're
Yeah.
not gonna go back and watch it. I think it's pretty easy to decide that we're probably going to table this one for a while.
Yeah.
It's gonna sit in the queue for a bit. I didn't want to skip ahead and give our final thoughts on this or anything, but ooh, I'm gonna say that this is probably not one we're gonna confirm.
Yeah.
So tell us down in the comments, who is it on the cover? Is it Rion, the other student, or is it the nurse?
It is the nurse. I just pulled up the intro sequence again.
I'm just gonna edit this right here. We're not gonna talk about it.
And she, of course, is one of the bad guys that, like, clearly it's a fucking bad guy thing because he looks like a creep.
All right, all right, all right. Well, how dare you find proof? Couldn't just let me have this one. All right. So the teacher, history teacher,
Yeah.
loses his memories. Hooray.
Yeah.
Everyone goes back into their Pokeballs. The last one shows up, and then the cut to credits. And that's pretty much the first three episodes.
Yep.
I would say there's a total of 5 minutes of substance,
Yeah.
and it's all in the sequence of the show. So
Right.
if you want to get a good grasp on this anime, go watch the ending credits and call it a day.
And the intro credits to see all the characters that are in there, especially the school nurse.
Especially the school nurse. Time will tell whether or not I've edited this whole part out, or if or we go back, listen to the episode, and they'll say, "Hey, Lotto, notice something about the ending there.
Yeah.
Don't know what you're
Oh.
talking about." All right. Well,
So,
okay. So, is there any final thoughts on this? I mean, that again, this there's not a whole lot to this.
well, we can, we already touched on the animation. Like,
Yeah.
you know, both of us were not too happy with the robotic nature and them, like, utilizing as few frames as possible to fill these
Yeah.
long 13-minute episodes. And, it's still better animation than season 2 of Blue Lock.
Oh my
Uh,
God. I'm glad you said that. I wasn't even gonna bring it up, but let's talk about that for just 10 seconds here. Okay?
Go
Season
for it.
2 of Blue Lock, for anybody who's what a disappointment. Talk
Oh yeah.
about setting the bar, right?
Oh yeah.
I
Set the
mean,
bar
we've
high
watched
and
some.
set it low. Dig
Oh
dig
my
a hole and
God.
shove the bar down there.
It was, yeah. I'm glad you set that tone because yes, I would say that this was still better than season 2 of Blue Lock.
Yeah.
100% agree with you.
I think this is gonna be my reference going forward.
It's just it's just baseline on a level of season 2 of Blue Lock to
Like Fearin
Frieren.
or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of just like 2024 anime that we've seen. And this isn't even from 2024, I'm just saying.
Exactly.
But yeah. Yeah, there'll be a whole guide on how to gauge. Now, I will say, artwork aside, I
Yep.
actually did like the character design specifically just for the Soul Busters. Now, we only saw two. I didn't hate it. I didn't hate it. I think if they were given like proper treatment, proper artwork treatment, they actually got to, move like
Right.
proper characters. I think that they would actually be kind of cool. They were interesting enough that they kind of looked old school, like samurai, soldiers, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
with like a little bit of new age flair, a little bit
Or
of
Chinese
technology kind of
soldiers.
peppered in there, or
Yeah.
Chinese soldiers. Sure, I said samurai, but
Yeah.
see
Yeah, I
this.
did actually. The one piece of like actual art that I think the artist was allowed to do was the blue on CoverGirl's helmet that like flares out to the side. It's like actually got a
Yes,
very cool little design in there, and it's like well highlighted. So it's like they were allowed to do like one piece of art because the artists were probably like, come on, just give me one thing, just
that's
one. Like,
that's where all the budget went.
yeah,
That's 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 why it ended up the way it did. It's like we blew all of our budget on the blue flares on the helmet.
yeah.
Shit, we still got a whole season to go.
Yeah.
Oh man.
What do you
Yeah, I
think of
it's
the what do you think of the music?
plain,
Yeah,
basic.
yeah,
It
yeah,
was
yeah.
kind of yeah, nothing to it. The sound quality was just like the rest of it. The intro is like probably, hey, let's just check Bob's Spotify list.
It just felt like to me like I took like audio from like a bunch of different anime, put it into AI, and said, "Do this, but try to make it like a rock song." And like they didn't even test it; they just threw it in there. They're like, "Good to go."
Yeah, it was rough. So generally to summarize, art was basic, music was basic,
Yep.
story almost non-existent. It I will say of storyline wise potential, like if you threw just tons and tons of money at this, I think if it could be good. I
Yeah.
think conceptually, I mean, just go watch Fate.
Right. Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
like if you want to see how this was done properly, it's probably is the closest thing that this relates to.
Really, to your point, like if they had the budget, because Fate is just done to death with all these weird worlds that they're building, and it really needs like a fresh reboot with a whole fresh set of characters and everything, and stop just reusing Arthur Pendragon and
How dare you?
yeah, exactly. I know. So this would have been great. I do have one more question about the plot. Whose soul gets busted by the soul busters? Because when the teacher got beat, his soul didn't get busted. His memory got busted.
I don't know.
So if
That was
these,
the word. That was too many word busted in one sentence. You lost me at like the third busted.
I'm just saying.
Just like the story. I'm lost before you've even asked the question.
Oh God.
So let me hand this off to you, I guess, for any final thoughts before let's jump right into the rating here, because
Yeah.
for those who haven't participated in other episodes and finally tagged along to this one, our ratings are uh, very unique, very
Yeah.
very crunchy roulette, you know.
Oh yeah.
So,
It's perfect.
did you have anything in mind? Any final thoughts, or do you want to offer up your thoughts on our rating?
Yeah, I would say, this falls like 36 cards short of a true busted soul. That's my official rating for Soul Buster.
Okay, okay. I don't know what any of that means.
Hey, it's scientific, man. I stayed up till like 2 a.m. trying to figure out that exact rating. Could have been
You know what?
35, could
I
have been 37. No.
I appreciate that I don't understand it. It stays with the tone so perfectly. Before I offer a rating, I'm gonna offer up a quick comment, and that's if anime was a flavor of ice cream, Soul Buster would be vanilla that was left on the counter overnight and refrozen without telling your mom. And
And ants
because
got
of
into it.
that, and yes,
That's what the black lines are. It's the ants on the
that's
vanilla.
it's totally just like, and with that, I'm gonna give Soulbuster 2 scoops of lukewarm vanilla out of the freezer.
There you go. With ants.
With it. You ever write down a thought you had? You're like, I'm gonna write this down. And then when you say it out loud, you're like, this makes even less sense than when
Yeah.
I wrote it. Which, once again, it's just so perfect for
It's
this anime.
oh hell yeah.
None of this makes any sense. Oh, so you've seen Soul Buster? Yes. Oh. All right, all right. Well, I got nothing else to say about this. I don't think we need to go into whether or not we're probably going to keep watching it.
Yeah,
I think
I'd say
that's
it's a
pretty
no.
obvious.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
could go with no.
yeah. So as always, I guess we'll just queue up the closing thoughts here and just say thanks for listening, everybody. We'll leave you with that,
Thank you
and just
all.
be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all the things, anything for the algorithm. Feed the algorithm right
Yum
down
yum
below.
yum. As always, everybody watch more anime, and unless you're listening to this podcast, otherwise watch more anime.
Go watch more anime.
Amen.
Stop the show right here at the end of the podcast. And go watch more anime.
Perfect.
All right, everybody. See ya.
Bye.